Hello everyone and welcome to this very first fleet overview video of Navis Nobilite. We are going to be talking today about the Imperial Navy. Now, the Imperial Navy has a very long history in Battlefleet Gothic. It has been there since the beginning, and you could even make the argument since before Battlefleet Gothic existed into the Space Fleet games that existed before Battlefleet Gothic. The Imperial Navy is a bit of a divergence of the standard Games Workshop modus operandi, which is if it is powerful and awesome and great and wins every time, it's Space Marine. In Battlefleet Gothic, that is not the case. The Imperial Navy is unquestionably the most powerful fleet in Battlefleet Gothic. And that's not necessarily because Battlefleet Gothic has uh, a balance issue in regards to the Imperial Navy. It's because the Imperial Navy just has so many options and so many things that it can do. First things first, you must realize that it's not just one Imperial Navy, there's a whole bunch of them. You have the original Gothic Sector fleet from the old Blue Book. You have the Armageddon Sector fleets and Segment of Obscurus. You have Battlefleet Cadia. You have the reserve fleets. There are so many different ways to play this fleet of ships. Now, regardless of which fleet you play in the Imperial Navy grand meta, they all share a certain tactical role and tactical what's a good way to put it? Doctrine. The Imperial Navy's vessels, when it comes to the preference of power versus your points, how much firepower you get per point that you spend to field the ships, is universal across every Imperial Navy faction. Namely speaking, that the Imperial Navy has more firepower concentrated in its escorts per point and more durability concentrated in ships as you get larger. Now, that does not mean that you're going to have fleets of, swarms of itty bitty little escorts with the Imperial Navy. It's not the way the Imperial Navy was built. Though you can absolutely have a more escort friendly fleet in the Imperial Navy, you'll find yourself suffering because the Imperial Navy escorts, while they are not slow, they are certainly not as nimble or agile as their competitors. Really, where the Imperial Navy shines are in its cruiser vessels. The cruisers of the Imperial Navy are very, very tough. They're very, very well armed. They are of decent but, average speed, but they are unquestionably some of the best in the game. And all the while, not being Space Marines. There are almost never Space Marines on Imperial vessels, which is something that I'm sure a lot of players of this of 40K will be very confused by. So the way that these are designed to be used, there is a universality to an Imperial cruiser. Imperial cruisers have a potent, and I do mean potent, special weapon in their prow. Either it is a Nova Cannon, or it is a series of torpedoes. Or in the case of light cruisers, it's a high-powered lance weapon. The battleships tend to be more specialized. They're either a gunship or a fleet carrier. They are designed to be able to take a beating and keep on ticking. Sorry, what's the term? Take a licking and keep on ticking. Whatever. They are very, very tough. They're very, very powerful, and they have very good range as your ship classes grows. Now, there are a lot of other specialized ships in the Imperial Navy that kind of fill out some of the holes in their tactical doctrine. So when it comes to more maneuverable craft, you have things like the light cruisers, which, unlike the standard Imperial cruiser, is very nimble and it can turn at very, very rapid rates, far faster than any Imperial cruiser that is larger than it. Now, these are your more standard Dauntless cruisers, which are the far more commonly seen in games. And then you have, of course, the less common Endeavor family of light cruisers. And these, when I get to their individual ship descriptions, will help explain why these are different and why they have different roles in the fleet. Now, if you move larger into the more specialized ships, you have things like the Grand Cruiser, which can be seen right here. This is a Vengeance Grand Cruiser. These ships are sort of a pocket battleship philosophy in design. They have a large amount of firepower and better durability, but they're not necessarily at battleship levels. Now, the actual fleet organization in regards to play and tactics is a very front-oriented, aggressive play style. They are meant to move forward towards the enemy, bombarding the enemy with things like torpedoes and Nova cannons. And once the enemy has been beaten up by these long-range firepower mechanics, they are to get in close and use their significantly shorter range port and starboard weapons to mop up anything that's left. Now, they are not particularly maneuverable, so they have a large number of escort craft, namely the Firestorms, which are these guys here that have these giant guns sticking out their front, the Cobras, which are right here, which are tiny little dedicated torpedo boats, and the Swords, which are dedicated battery platforms. They're just gunships. Now, there's also the Falchion that you can see right here, which are kind of a hybrid between a Cobra and a Sword. They have a much weaker torpedo, but still a very decent weapons battery option. The combination of these factors creates an astoundingly stable fleet. And because you have so many options and so many combinations of vessels that allow you to build a very sturdy, a very solid, a very crunchy fleet, you can go up against just about any other fleet and have a really solid chance of victory. The Imperial Navy is a phenomenal fleet to pick, especially for beginners, simply because you have so many options and so many ways to play the game with the Imperial Navy. And a lot of the more commonly known fleets that you can see have direct connections to tabletop 40K groups, especially things like Battlefleet Cadia. And they have individual rules that make them unique. So, for example, the most bare bones fleet that comes out of the original Blue Book Battlefleet Gothic, it would be the Gothic Sector Fleet. It has ships utterly unique to it that do not appear in any other fleet of the Imperial Navy, giving even the very first fleet that came out in 1999 a unique edge that much more modern fleets do have. But if you want, and you don't like the feel of that particular fleet, you can instead play the Segmentum Solar Armageddon Sector fleet, which allows you to take enormous numbers of battle cruisers and battleships. It's a phenomenal flexibility. And even if you want to play a really interesting but very risky fleet, there is the Segmentum Obscurus Reserve Fleet, which allows you to even take Chaos vessels in your Imperial Navy fleet, with some significant consequences to it. But this overview, I hope, has given you some idea of what makes the Imperial Navy really fun to play. I'm now going to begin videos about the individual ships, going over what they are useful for and what they are used for within the grand scheme of the Imperial Navy. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I will talk to you all again soon.